All right, welcome back to Singapore Property Talk Law, everyone, the show that cuts straight to the chase. You already know the drill. It's me, Damien, and I'm joined by Serene today.
Hey, everyone.
So today, we're diving deep, no pun intended, into a story that's been blowing up here. I'm talking about Chia Boon Tek, the, former vice president of the Law Society of Singapore.
Yeah, this has caused quite a stir. Lots of opinions flying around, Damien. And today, we're specifically looking at everything that came after those comments Mr. Chia made on his LinkedIn. Remember those? About the rape survivor in that Lev Panfilov case in the High Court. We've got our trusty Straits Times articles here covering the initial comments, all the reactions that followed, and, of course, Mr. Chia's resignation.
Right. So for this deep dive, we're going for clarity. What did Chia Boon Tek actually say that triggered such a strong response? Why was everyone, like the legal community and the law minister, so quick to condemn his words? And what does this whole thing tell us about how we talk about and think about sexual assault cases here in Singapore? Serene, let's break it down. What exactly did Mr. Chia say that set everyone off?
Okay, so picture this. It's March 22nd, and Chia Boon Tek goes on LinkedIn and posts his take on the Lev Panfilov case. Now, Panfilov, as many of you probably know, was convicted of raping a woman he met on Tinder.
Right.
So Mr. Chia makes this long post with 10 points about the case. But within this post, he makes some remarks about the survivor that, let's just say, raised a few eyebrows, Damien. He says, and I quote, "Tinder ain't no LinkedIn," implying, that meeting someone on Tinder is somehow different, that there are different expectations or something. Then he goes on to describe the 30-year-old victim, who's a grown woman, as not exactly a babe in the woods, which just feels off, right? Like, what does that even mean in this context? And perhaps the most jarring comment was when he questioned, wow, was she awake during this marathon?
Whoa, those are some strong words, especially coming from the vice president of the Law Society. Just for our listeners, this post isn't online anymore. It's been taken down, and Chia's whole LinkedIn profile seems to have vanished. But this wasn't just some fleeting comment, right? This came from someone with a lot of authority in the legal field. So, Serene, what happened next? Who were the first people to react to this?
Well, the reactions were immediate and pretty intense. I mean, a lot of people were outraged. One of the first and most prominent voices to speak up was Law Minister K. Shanmugam.
Right.
2 days after Mr. Chia's post, Shanmugam went on Facebook and expressed his strong disapproval. And he was surprised, right, to see these kinds of views from a senior lawyer. What Shanmugam was really worried about was the message this sent. Could these comments make other victims hesitant to come forward? Because to him, it sounded like Chia Boon Tek was saying this is normal, that maybe the victim shouldn't be believed. And that could be really damaging, especially for someone in his position.
That's a really important point, the idea that a senior lawyer's words could discourage victims from seeking justice. It's chilling. And it wasn't just a matter of opinion for Shanmugam, was it? He actually went on to remind everyone about how Singapore's laws have been changing to better protect victims of sexual assault, right?
Yes, exactly. Minister Shanmugam brought up those key legal reforms, the ones that are aimed at helping victims. Like, remember that provision in the Evidence Act that allowed defense lawyers to ask rape victims about their sexual history?
Yeah, that always felt wrong to me.
Well, it was repealed back in 2012. And then, in 2020, they abolished marital immunity for rape. Plus, they've increased the penalties for sexual offenses. Even outrage of modesty is taken more seriously now. So you can see what Shanmugam was getting at. Singapore has been making progress legally to be more supportive of victims. And then Chia Boon Tek makes these comments. It was like a step backward.
Yeah, I get it. A real disconnect there. And from what I'm seeing in these articles, Shanmugam wasn't the only one who felt that way, was he? The legal community itself was pretty vocal. A lot of people calling for Chia Boon Tek to resign. Who were some of the other people who spoke out, and what were their main concerns?
Oh, you're absolutely right. The backlash from other lawyers was immense. One lawyer, Edward Tay from Continental Law, he was really taken aback. He talked about how disturbing it was to see someone, especially a senior lawyer, seemingly undermining the victim's credibility. Like, that's a big deal. And how it could make people lose trust in the whole legal system. He even mentioned how he felt personally as a husband and a father. And it sounded like this feeling of, like, disapproval was really widespread among lawyers, which is reassuring in a way, right?
Definitely. I mean, it's good to know that victim shaming isn't tolerated, even among lawyers. Who else stepped up?
Well, Stephanie Wantillo from TSMP Law Corporation, she didn't hold back. She said she was appalled, plain and simple, especially since Chia Boon Tek was the vice president of the Law Society at the time. She straight up called for his resignation. And her point was that this victim shaming goes against what Chief Justice Sundaresh Menon has been saying about treating victims of sexual crimes with respect and dignity. It was a big deal for her. She really stressed that the Law Society needed to take a strong stance against this.
Yeah, it sounds like she was drawing a line in the sand. And were there others who were just as critical?
Absolutely. Shashi Nathan from Withers Worldwide was very clear. Chia Boontek had gone too far. And he emphasized that these comments weren't at all representative of the criminal bar in Singapore. Then you have Sugita Nithyantam from Aware. Now, Aware is a well-known organization that advocates for gender equality. She was really concerned that Chia's statements were playing into those harmful, outdated stereotypes about rape,
Hmm.
like the idea that if a woman is on Tinder or if she behaves a certain way, then somehow she's asking for it. It was perpetuating those myths that we really need to move away from.
Right. Those are some serious accusations. So how did Mr. Chia respond to all this backlash? Did he try to defend himself or clarify his comments before ultimately resigning?
He did. Initially, when the Straits Times contacted him, he tried to explain his LinkedIn post. He claimed that he was trying to raise awareness about situational awareness, like how people should be more careful to protect themselves from assault, but also to avoid making false accusations.
Hmm.
He insisted that he was speaking as a criminal lawyer, offering his professional opinion, and that his intention was to encourage people to think about self-protection, not to blame the victim.
I see. So he was trying to frame it as a safety message rather than an attack on the victim.
Exactly. But, well, it didn't seem to convince many people. The criticism just kept coming.
Okay. And what about the Law Society itself? What was their official response before their president called for Chia Boontek to resign?
Well, at first, the Law Society played it safe. They issued a statement saying they were looking into the matter and that they expected all their members to maintain the highest professional standards. They also made it clear that Chia Boontek's comments were his own personal views, not the official position of the Law Society. They wanted to assure the public that they were taking this seriously and would take appropriate action according to their rules.
Right, a very measured response. But then things escalated pretty quickly, didn't they? Chia Boontek ended up resigning. What led to that?
Yeah, things moved fast. Just a few days after his initial post and all the backlash that followed, Chia Boontek resigned as the vice president of the Law Society. And this happened very shortly after the president of the Law Society, Lisa San Min, made a public statement calling for him to step down. The statement came out really late, like 1 a.m. on March 25th. And in it, she basically said that questioning the victim's morality the way Chia Boontek did was completely unacceptable, especially for someone in a leadership role within the Law Society.
So basically, the head of the Law Society herself said his position was untenable.
Exactly.
What happened after the resignation?
It was immediate. By the morning of March 25th, his name was gone from the Law Society's website. They issued a brief statement acknowledging his past contributions and wishing him well. It was all very quick and clean.
Wow. So to give our listeners a bit more context, let's go back to the case itself, the Lev Panfilov case. Can you remind us about the key details of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lev Panfilov, you might know him as a TikToker and a former scriptwriter-actor. He was convicted on March 21st of several offenses: 2 counts of rape, sexual assault by penetration, and outrage of modesty. He met the victim through Tinder, and she was actually seeking professional advice from him. They met at a restaurant first, but then they went back to his apartment, and the assaults happened in his bedroom. The victim was very clear that she rejected his advances, and she was getting ready to leave when it happened. The High Court judge, Pang Kong Chow, found the victim to be a credible and consistent witness. He didn't believe Panfilov's testimony because it was full of inconsistencies.
So a clear guilty verdict, which makes Chia Boontek's comments even more shocking, right?
Yeah, it's like he was trying to undermine the court's decision.
I see. Now, for those who might not know Chia Boontek, can you tell us a bit more about his background? What else has he been involved in?
So Chia Boontek is a co-managing director at Chia Wong Chambers, a law firm. He's also been the president of the Exoticars Club, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
He's had quite a diverse career. Before becoming a lawyer, he was a commando in the Singapore Armed Forces, then an investigator with the Criminal Investigation Department, and even a cabin crew member with Singapore Airlines.
Quite the resume.
He was admitted to the bar in 1995, and he's been involved in some high-profile cases, even some pro bono work, which means he provided legal services for free. He also got some media attention back in 2015 because he was one of the people who filed police reports against Amos Yee. It seems like he's always had a thing for sharing his thoughts on criminal cases, but this one, well, it backfired. Big time.
So a well-known figure with a colorful background. As we wrap up this deep dive, Serene, what are the most important things for our listeners to take away from this whole story?
Well, I think a few things are really clear. First, what Chia Boontek said was just wrong. It was completely inappropriate, especially for someone in his position, and especially when talking about sexual assault. The way he phrased things, it sounded like he was blaming the victim, and that's never okay.
Mm.
Second, the reaction was huge. It wasn't just the law ministers, other lawyers too. So many people were quick to say, no, this is not okay. It shows that there's a strong feeling within the legal community that victim shaming is wrong and won't be tolerated.
It's good to hear that.
And lastly, his resignation. It shows that words have consequences, especially when you're in a position of power. When you say something like that publicly, there can be serious repercussions.
Yeah, that's a lesson for everyone, really.
And it's a good reminder for our listeners that the Law Society doesn't agree with Chia Boontek. They've said his views are his own, and they've made it clear that they're committed to upholding professional standards and holding their members accountable.
Right, they're trying to distance themselves from all of this.
This whole situation is a chance for us to reflect on how we talk about sexual assault. It's a sensitive issue, and the words we use matter, especially the words of people in influential positions, like lawyers. It's a reminder that we need to challenge those victim-blaming narratives and create a more supportive environment for survivors. Think about it. What kind of society do we want to live in? One where victims feel safe to come forward and seek justice? Or one where they're afraid to speak up because they might be blamed? This is a conversation we need to keep having.
Well said, Serene. And on that note, I think we'll wrap things up for today. For all you listeners out there, keep those questions coming, and we'll see you next time on Singapore Property Talk Law.
See you next time.
Bye!